Good good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. So there is a minute left. And how were the lectures yesterday?
Yesterday it was all the lectures were sir, it was good, and today just we have concluded the lecture by Professor Krishna Misra ma'am. So
Okay. Good.
now this is the second lecture of the day.
So you have a slew of lectures, now number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. How many lectures are there today, sir?
Today every day 4 lectures.
Achha, every day.
2 pre-lunch,
when is
2
it?
post-lunch.
And when is the assessment?
Assessment every day we are keeping from 4 to 6.
So should I also give some questions?
No, our TAs are already listening to your lecture, so they will be making some questions, and at the end of the day, they will be assessing the students based on the sessions that has been conducted today.
Okay, sir. Okay.
So you have to just deliver your lecture.
So as soon as you give a green signal, sir, I'll start.
So, sir, green signal is already there. I need to. Friends, so once again, let me welcome Professor Shekhar Verma, sir. So currently, like he is the Dean Special Development Affairs, but that is a very small introduction of him. And actually, he is the one of the senior most professors of Triple ITA, and one of the professors who is very busy academically and very not only academically but also like just to have to approach him with any problem and anything, and he will have solution, academic problems of course, to all those problems. So academically vibrant professor we have. So his area is basically the professor of IT. So definitely this artificial intelligence and machine learning, definitely you will be learning from him in the days to come. But today he will be delivering you a lecture on ancient Indian knowledge. So thank you, sir. Now this is the student, this is a batch of BTech first year students, and this orientation sessions, it should have been conducted at the beginning. It should have been actually conducted in July, but because of this COVID pandemic, the session is delayed, and now we are conducting it at the end of the semester. And the technical reasons we have already discussed with you why we are conducting it in a workshop mode. So now, sir, the floor is all yours. So
thank you, sir.
Well,
thank you, Professor Sanjeev, for the nice introduction. Good morning, friends, and morning, students. I'll just stop my video and share my slides. And let me share my slides quickly, and then yes. I hope my slides are visible, Professor Sanjeev.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So let's start. And as you know, what is orientation all about? So before we start, let me tell you, if you read about orientation of different colleges and different institutions, you will find that orientation usually, in the usual sense, refers to introducing the student to the new institute. What is what, where is what, all these things are what are the code of conduct, what are the course structure, what do you, how do you really navigate yourself initially through the college life, and who shall be your friends, and what is a hostel, and so on and so forth. But that will happen on 12th, and there'll be an orientation session, which will be more of an introductory session, which will be held on 12th in the institute itself. Talking about this orientation, and you have seen it for more than one day now, it's trying to tell you that in Indian system, we grow, and education is not about knowledge. Education is not about higher studies. Education is not about getting a good job. It is not about earning more and more zeros. It is about living and training yourself to be a part of the society, training yourself to give back to the society which has given you so much, and also learning to connect yourself with the society and with your culture. And then it's basically an orientation and to tell you how do you really become a well-rounded personality. Why so? Why so is because if you've seen, the best in classes do not become the best in life and career. The best in sports do not become the best in sports later. So this training, the indicators which are there when you are trying to train yourself for life are actually not the best indicators for success, whatever the yardstick of success may be. So why? Because some people say that it's the amount of risk that you can take. Some people say the amount of connect that you have with the society. Some people also say that it's your ability to manage the society, to manage something, and it's an optimization problem where you try to maximize your gain at the cost of others. We don't have a single answer for this. But one thing is certain, that you need to reorient yourself, because as I observed yesterday, that now you are in for a marathon run, which is called life. It was not scaling IIT JEE, which was a wall. And everything that we were doing for at least for the past 1 year was actually, or 2 years perhaps, was actually trying to scale a wall. And the rules of the games are different. The way you scale a wall is different. The preparation is different. And preparing to lead a life where you have continual learning is going to be different. So one thing which is important is trying to find your connect with the society. And since you are in an engineering institute, trying to find out what our ancestors have given us. What others have given us is very, very important. But remember, what our ancestors are given and is the most important thing, that you come from the same lineage. You can also make a difference. So it's a confidence building exercise. It's an eye-opening lecture. And I'll tell you what is actually so important, and people could foresee their future. And also tell you that this IT and electronics engineering are not something which are a recent development. People were knowing about it right from the beginning. So I'll be talking about ancient Indian knowledge. However, I'll not be talking about ancient Indian knowledge in different areas. I'll be basically talking about ancient Indian knowledge. When we are talking about computer science, we are talking about electronics engineering. And if you look at the ancient Indian knowledge, the implementations have not really survived. So what we have are the plethora of ideas which have been documented by, and the documentations are also rare, but the documentations are rare. So we'll be talking more about the ideas. But remember, if you are so developed in ideas, perhaps we were as developed in the practical part as well. So let's look at computer science. And remember, when you are trying to implement something in electronics engineering, basically you are trying to implement the ideas only. So before we go a little further, or we talk about the ancient Indian knowledge, let's talk about computer science. And it has two fundamental elements. What we want to do in computer science, we want to develop techniques. The implementation we leave to electronics engineering, people who are good at it. And we want to develop techniques that make the elucidation of the computational structure of nature. How does the nature compute things? How does the mind compute things? We want to develop techniques, and that will help the nature. We'll try to emulate the nature and the mind and have a better life. And also, just for being pragmatic, we want to know how nature works, how nature computes, how nature is able to compute things, so that we can copy it. We can have a better understanding. That's the first aim of computer science. It's pretty selfish aim, but that's a very, very noble aim as well. And number two, creation of new computing algorithms and machines that have powerful cognitive and computational capabilities. And you have already been learning about this in the first semester. In computer organization, you'll be learning that in the second semester. But you need to create new computational algorithms. And you'll find that if you find about the top 10 algorithms which have been developed by human beings, you'll find that 9 out of 10 have been developed in the 20th century. but the seeds were already there. And the one algorithm has its root in antiquity, and we'll be talking about that one algorithm today. So, and you know that from class 5th or class 8th onwards. So the second aim of computer science is to create computational algorithms. And when we say machines, it can be a hardware implementation or a software implementation. And we want to become as powerful or more powerful than our human mind itself. It should have very powerful cognitive and computational capabilities. But remember, we also need to develop and aim to develop techniques for representing and manipulating knowledge. We should be in a position to represent knowledge. How do you represent knowledge? And we do not know what is knowledge yet. How to develop techniques for inference? How do you infer? How do you deduce? We wish to develop that. So why it is so important? Because we have data, we have information, and we can represent the data and information through their attributes. But how do we represent knowledge? That is a fundamental question that ails computer science. And we try to have better and better representations. And we have an entire representation theory for it. But the first question that needs to be answered is, what is data? What is information? Or what is knowledge? Are all of them same? Are they different? Or one is a precursor to the other? We wish to know that. So all that we get through our sensory organs is data. But then what is information? Now, let's quickly take an example. For example, somebody tells you that the sun rises in the east. This is data, obviously. The sun rises in the east is data, is something that you have. Or you see that the sun is rising in the east every day. So that's data that you have sensed it. So you have gathered this data through either your sensory organs or through some instrument or somebody telling you. So, and we assume that what somebody is telling you is correct all the time. So sun rises in the east is data. But does this data have information also? So we say, no, I already knew. This is universal truth. We already knew that sun rises in the east. But then I say, okay, it is very hot today outside. And assuming that what I'm saying is correct, we know that it's April, it's going to be hot. So this also contains very little information, because some people might say that April is not so hot, but it's usually hot. So no information again. We already knew it. But suppose I say that this building, or for example, we are going to say that's raining outside. Now, suppose what I'm saying, this piece of data is correct, then what is going to happen? Since it's summer, it's not going to rain. But if it's raining, then this particular data contains a lot of information. And suppose I tell you that it's snow, there's a snowfall outside, you say, no, there's no possibility of snowfall. But if what I'm saying is correct, then this data contains a lot of information. So here something, we get an inkling that whatever, if the probability of an event is low, then that particular data contains a lot of information. So it's the uncertainty in the data which is the information. And we say the I is inversely proportional to P, where P is the probability of occurrence of that particular data. So now we have some idea of what is information, but then what is knowledge? Then we say, okay, if it is snowing outside and I find that I have some money and I'll know that, and I go and buy a jacket, a snow jacket. The fact that it was snowing outside and I decided to buy a snow jacket had no relations. They were apparently two unconnected pieces of data. that I had a little money in my pocket just now, and that the fact that it was snowing outside. Not related things, but I created a relation between them. I went and bought a snow jacket. So this knowledge is the relation that you create between apparently unconnected pieces of information or data. When I say information or data, I assume that all data is novel, but not known to me, and hence it's information. So what is knowledge? Knowledge is that relation, that imaginary relation that you create when you connect apparently unrelated pieces of data. So it's that relation that you create as knowledge. And hence, the question is, how do you really represent knowledge? And here in India, in natural language processing, in Panini grammar, the basic object of attention of the great Rishi was representation. How can we have the task of representing and processing this representation, which is this knowledge? And this was there all the time, but Indians had really, the rishis have really dwelt into it, have really worked on it. And grammarians have considered the questions of relating facts. Remember, relations, the development of relation was the knowledge of relating facts about physical world and cognition to linguistic expressions. So the grammarians were really working on the questions of relating facts about physical world and cognition to linguistic. How do you really represent knowledge? The facts about physical world and cognition to linguistic expressions. And what they did was not just some ad hoc representation. The logicians could have developed formal structures to relate events and draw inferences, because when you try to draw inference, that is knowledge. Finding out that yes, the three sides of the triangle are there, and then trying to infer and trying to deduce that the sum of the three angles is going to be 180 degrees, what is knowledge? And this is seen best in our ancient logicians and grammarians. So the question is, are there rules in ancient Indian logic and grammar that may be of use in computer science and cognitive computing? Fortunately, the answer is yes. People had thought about this and developed grammars of natural language. And what we know is that the grammars that they had developed is as powerful as any computing machine. And we now see that there is a connection between a computing machine and the grammars of natural language. The grammar of Sanskrit, for example. And the formal structure of a grammar can easily be adapted so as to perform numerical processing. So nowadays we are saying that we can do symbolic processing, we can use the representations itself, the computers can use to perform computing, is what is coming to the fore. And this was thought of long back. Yes. Now, when you have a formal representation, then Panini's grammar, which was the book Ashtadhyay, we already know from our childhood that we have the Dhatupad, we have the Ganapad, and we can not just merely deal with the analysis of words, which is Shabd Anushasan, but in fact provide a analysis of the analysis of sentences can be done. If you probably another 2 years or 3 years, you'll be studying about NLP, and you'll find that this is the crux of the entire natural language processing. And you will also understand why natural languages are not really suited for computer language. We have languages like C, Python, so on and so forth. Why? The reason is written here. And then due to its algebraic structure and its comprehensiveness and the exactness, the structure, this is something which can be used, and it can be used as a machine or a computer for generating words and sentences of Sanskrit. So here what I'm trying to drive at is that you have a set of rules which can be used as we do in algebra. We have rules which can be used to generate expressions. So expressions in Sanskrit, or word formation in Sanskrit, is not something which is ad hoc, is derived in an algebraic way. And there are sutras which are 4,000 in numbers that capture the fundamentals of Sanskrit language in terms of phonology, morphology, and syntax. So as any formal system, and we have studied in first year in discrete maths, how to prove and proving, you understand that any formal system, there's a structure, contains definitions, theorems, and meta theorems. That is, the meta theorem is a theorem about theorems. And there are different rules. Some are universal, some are context free, some are context sensitive, some are locally applicable, some are recursive, some are sequentials, and they can be used to generate languages and expressions. So they can be, and this was all thought of in Sanskrit grammar. So there can be rules of interpretation or meta rules. What is a meta rule? It is a rule about rule. Then there's a rule of affixation. So prescribing affixes to two kinds of basic dhatu roots. Then there's rules of transformation, which are morphophonemic rules. So there are different rules. And in a computer program also, you declare the variables, and then there are rules to create expressions, and there are rules so that you can compile later. So a computer program is exactly the same general structure of context-sensitive rules, recursion, and sequential rule generation. So the Pani grammar, which was some 2,000, 3,000 or more years old, has the same structure, a formal structure, wherein rules or meta rules could be used for generating language, for generating grammar, for generating expressions. And as you can read, the grammar is algebraic, where a finite set of rules could generate infinite numbers of words and sentences. And the whole Paninian system was based on what is known as the Occam razor. What is known as the Occam razor, which says, so what is Pani grammar? The Pani grammar begins with meta rules or rules about rules. So, and then it tells you about meta language, then how to generate words and sentences. What is Occam's razor? So it says that it's a principle of theory of construction, when we say that a minimum explanation of something is more preferable than a verbose explanation. So any system in Sanskrit, especially grammar system, is so compact. So it follows the Occam's razor for theory of construction or evaluation. So and importantly, an important feature of Paninian grammar is that it is able to have meta rules which can be used to generate grammar. And there is a development of logic. So we can represent knowledge, and we have grammatical categories to serve to express knowledge about. How do you express those imaginary relations? Remember, the aim of all machine learning, the aim of artificial intelligence, the aim of, in fact, of all computer science is to represent knowledge. And people have drawn from the Paninian grammar and grammatical categories to express knowledge about the world. And the Paninian system of knowledge to represent knowledge representation is based on Karak theory, which is very, very important in machine learning, in cognitive theory, natural language processing. And what is a Karak? Karak is, for example, a semantic relation between the verb and the noun. So Karak are deep structural relations that mediate the mapping from semantic relations, which is a verb, to a phonological representations, which are nouns, via some structures. In short, the Karak is actually a relation between the verb and a noun. So there is a relation on top. There is a relation, deep relation, which is a semantic relation, and the relation, remember, is the knowledge. So a kala can be used to represent knowledge. So as you can see, we have grammars which could talk about logic, which could talk about knowledge representation, which could call it about deduction, which could talk about inference, so on and so forth. And we had a meta language, a language of language that had its own vocabulary, syntax, and grammar. So the aspects of Paninian grammar, if you look at, had several parallels, and the knowledge representation given by Paninian grammar is unique in the history of computer science. A second more interesting thing, let's move from grammar now. We have talked about grammar a lot. Let's talk about hashing. So hashing is a technique which is used in computer science. It's a one-way function. And the idea is very easy, though there is a lot of theory for it, but the idea is very simple. You take a number and you take a modulo of it. For example, if you take modulo 5, that means you divide by 5 and reject the number and just retain the remainder of that particular operation. I'll just repeat. Seems to be there's some confusion here. So if you want to do modulo 5 and you divide the number 11, so 11 divided by 5 is 2, and the quotient is 2, the remainder is 1. So you forget about the quotient, retain the remainder. For example, if you want to do modulo 13 and you want to divide a number, say 25 on 13, the quotient is 1, the remainder is 12. So modulo operation rejects the quotient. It's just a division which just rejects the quotient and retains the remainder. But then it becomes a one-way function. Given 12, you will not know that the number was 25. Given 13, it was a divisor. Given the remainder, you cannot find the original number. So that's a one-way function. That's an example of a modulo operation, which is an example of hashing. And that is used in databases, widely used in databases, used in computer networks for storage of addresses and routing. When you route on the internet and when you send packets from one place to another, at each router, the routing information is contained in the hash table. It has a lot of applications in cryptography, rather from ensuring the integrity of a message to storage of data on a blockchain to powering the Bitcoin. So in fact, all Bitcoin or solving the mining problem, which is called the proof of work in Bitcoin, all which is just nothing but a cryptographic puzzle, or all use hashing. And in Sanskrit, we had what was known as the Kat Payadi scheme, which was nothing but hashing. In fact, the entire South Indian music or musicology, if you call it, was based on Kat Payadi, just similar to modern hashing, wherein we could represent the consonants by numbers. So you could represent the consonants by numbers. There was a mapping between which was defined by the Kat Payadi system to represent the consonants by the by numbers, and we could write the entire music using numerals. Then, coming back to the languages, we know that we in computer science we have different forms, and there's called a BNF form. We'll be studying that in the third semester in theory of computation, and we'll find that there are some forms in these of syntax in formal languages, and Sanskrit language, the grammar has amazing closeness to what is known as the BNF form, Backus norm form. And we could find that this formal structure of computer programming languages, which had this Backus-Naur form or BNF form, has amazing similarity to Sanskrit grammar. And just to make the long story short, the invention of the notation by Parni is quite similar to the BNF. Then the binary number itself were known to in Pingel's Chand Shastra. So remember the power of binary system, which came in the late the later part of the 20th century, from 1950s, were known in some BC, first century BC, and were used for classifying the Vedic meters. And now this is something which is very, very interesting. Everybody has seen Sri Yantra. If you have not seen it, nothing to worry about. But there's something in which there's a plate, some brass plate or some gold plate or something, and consists of 9 triangles inscribed within a circle, which leads to formation of 43 little triangles. It's called Sri Yantra. It's actually for the puja purpose. However, it has a mathematical connotation. However, you can make it not only on a flat plate, but also on any curved plate. And if you can make triangles on a curved plate, you must know that the 3 angles of a triangle on a curved surface does not sum to 180 degrees. So if that does not sum to 180 degrees, then you must have knowledge of non-Euclidean geometry. And this non-Euclidean geometry, my friends, is the forefront of what we try to do in machine learning today. How to handle data points or data which is non-Euclidean. And people had thought about it, say, in a very, very simple form, although, then so many years back, some thousands of years back. What I'm trying to tell you is not that we knew everything. Our ancestors knew everything, but they could logically think, they could develop things, they could demonstrate their knowledge well beyond their times. Now let's look at something which is very, very interesting and the center focal point of computer science all the time, which is called the P versus the NP problem. Suppose I forget about what I have written, but let's see, suppose I ask you to solve a factorization problem. So when we say that we want to solve a factorization problem, I give you a number and ask you to factorize it. Find out the prime factors of that number. What is the technique that you use? Do you have any algorithm for it? We find that we don't have an algorithm for it. You have to apply a brute force technique. You have to divide it by 2, then divide it by 3, then divide it by 5, then divide it by 7, then divide it by 11. So what is that? A brute force technique. So if the number is very large, you might end up take some years together for doing it. So if you do not have an algorithm, for example, again, so if you the class of problems which have efficient solutions are polynomial time. For example, if I ask you to do a matching problem, for example, suppose we have a large group of students that we need to pair up for work. There can be, for 40 students, there can be 300 billion trillion possible pairings. We have solved it using, so you don't have to do it in a brute force manner. We have an algorithm that you can do it. So there's an efficient way of doing it. So these problems where we have efficient solutions are known as polynomial time, P. Other problems, for example, the prime factorization problem that I talked to you about, these problems do not have a solution, do not have a polynomial time solutions. So the collection of problems that can be verified but cannot be solved. You want to have a polynomial time algorithm, and excuse me, it's a very, I'm abusing the vocabulary. So they fall into what are known as NP class. And we have non-deterministic polynomial time problems. And the central question is of computer science today is P is equal to NP? The professor that you met yesterday, my friends, Professor Manindra Agarwal, tried to prove that yes, the primes are not are in P. That you can have some polynomial time algorithm, and it's not really a brute force. You can have some algorithm, but now what is the algorithm? We do not know. But he has proved that primes are in P. So that was one of his greatest contribution, for which he got Padma Shri and whatnot. But you get the hang of it. So so many NP-complete problems are problems which do not have an algorithm has to be solved by using brute force. For example, finding a DNA sequence that best fits a collection of fragments of the sequence, doing prime number factorization, so on and so forth. There are so many problems which are not amenable to polynomial time solutions or algorithms. And this hardness, for example, this RSA algorithm, which is used in cryptography, is based on the hardness of the prime number factorization. So you give a prime number and you rely on the factorization. You give a number which is so large that doing its prime number factorization might take years, and that is utilized in public key cryptography. So the prime number factorization is hard to perform, easy to verify. However, and suppose in a Sudoku problem also, the problem is n square into n square, which is NP complete. And we know that in computer science, this hardness is exploited for security. So the question is, do you have hints of this also in our computer science? In our ancient people, did they have this idea? The idea was yes. People could not just think of this, that there is a problem, but solve a very interesting problem that we have done at class 8th and 9th level. How do you find out the HCF or the GCD? We find out the prime number factorization of the first number, prime number factorization of the second number, find out which is common, and find out the HCF or the GCD. But Aryabhat gave a remainder theorem, which is similar to the Chinese remainder theorem, or the extended Euclidean theorem, Euclid's theorem, or Euclid algorithm. Remember what we did? If you have two numbers, A and B, we divide B by A and then divide A by B, and we do it to find out what is the HCF. So here, the Aryabhat gave a remainder theorem, which actually solves this problem. And this is one of the greatest algorithms known to us. Why? Because you are able to find out the HCF, you have an algorithm for HCF which does it without doing the prime number factorization, for which we don't have an algorithm. So the Aryabhat solved the indeterminate equation ax plus c is equal to by. And if you look at the whole thing, it's something like this. It's ax plus by is equal to c. And it requires that there is an integer n when divided by a leaves remainder r1, and when we divide it by b leaves remainder r2, and we have to find out x and y such that ax plus by is equal to c. This is also known as the solution is given by Euclid. This is also known as the extended Euclidean algorithm, Euclid algorithm, but it was given by Aryabhat and was now known as Kutakka algorithm or Kutak algorithm way back. And it is finds the basis of the integer solutions of the Diophantine equation. And this is heavily used in cryptography. And this algorithm was invented by Aryabhat in 476 BC. And later on, 476 CE, sorry. And Bhaskar 1 actually gives a detailed algorithm in Aryabhat Bhashya. And here is the algorithm. and it's the precursor of the extended Euclid algorithm, which says ax plus by is equal to GCD of a and b. And it tries to find out the x and y. So there are two integers x and y. You find out a and b such that ax plus by is equal to GCD of ab, called the extended Euclid algorithm, and you'll be studying that probably in your courses. In your algorithm course, you'll be coding it. But remember, you need to remember that its precursor came way back some 2000 years back. And the Aryabhatta remainder theorem is more powerful than the Chinese remainder theorem that we do actually to solve a lot of such issues. Then, not only that, people delved in trigonometry as well. They could give a table, for example, a sine table, and I'll just show you the sine table quickly. So, for example, in the Aryabhatta, this thing, he gave a stanza written Maki, Bhaki, Phaki, Thaki, Raki, and so on, and this encodes the sine. So this encodes the sine. In the table, the angle measures are given. It may not be very, very clear to you on your computers. But however, the third column contains a list of numbers in Sanskrit word given in Devanagari script, of course, which tells you the value of the sine. And people could calculate the value of the sine, and that has an uncanny similarity to modern calculations. So people not only knew but could calculate sine, give the values of sine, and could really talk about trigonometry. Similarly, they could people had given an expression about sines which relates to the if you see it, it is actually an approximation of the sine series. However, though people said that it's actually then proven that actually this P was called was known to be seen to be 10, but ultimately Bhaskaracharya proved that it has an irrational value. Similarly, a system of linear equations people could solve. And you'll see that in optimization, for example, the problem of optimization, finding out maxima, minima, reduces to the problem of solving multiple simultaneous equations. And these simultaneous equations, people had given the solution long, long back. We could talk about numbers. For example, Jain mathematics, they could talk about large number, infinites. In fact, they had talked about 5 different types of infinity. The infinity in one direction, the infinity in 2 directions, the infinity in area, spatial, the infinity everywhere, the infinite in time, which is perpetually. So not only they could know what is infinity, but they could think in terms of infinity, and they could enumerate that we had not 1, not 2, but different kinds of infinity. Similarly, people could use very large numbers. And see, today imagining that we have large numbers is easy. But for example, they could enumerate and show that they made it a part of the mantra. So the mantra at the end of the food oblation rite performed during the Ashwamedha Yagya, uttered just before, during, and after the sunrise, invokes the power of 10. So the mathematics is encapsulated into religion. So hail to Shat, hail to Hastra, hail to Ayut, hail to Dawn, hail to Swarg, hail to the Marty. So just not hail the numbers, trillion, but hail to everything which is there existing, and something which is immortal to mortal. So people could not just imagine. People, not only our ancient Indian knowledge was something which was extraordinary, is extraordinary, but they have been able to take it to the people in forms of mantras. Finally, my friends, I'll just take 5 more minutes to talk about something which is very, very interesting. We have talked about representation of knowledge. We have talked about logic. We have talked about grammar. We have talked about hashing or one-way functions. We have talked about trigonometry. But we have not talked about something which is the most interesting of them all, the generation of knowledge and proof as a primary vehicle for knowledge generation. If I can prove that the three sides of a triangle in the Euclidean plane is 180 degrees, then it is actually not generation of knowledge. So can logic be a vehicle for generation of knowledge? How do you really generate new knowledge? You perceive the outside world. That's perception. Then you infer. This process of inference creates more knowledge. And this is something which is there in the systems of philosophy also, mathematics also. They recognized that proof can be a vehicle for knowledge generation. In computer science as well, everywhere. And in computer science, we have an additional use apart from saying that's a vehicle for knowledge generation. It can be used to verify a particular system. For example, if you have a program and if you can verify its correctness formally, then you'll know that there'll be no backdoor entry. If you have an operating system and you can formally verify, then you'll know that there'll be no virus which can actually invade it. But however, we know that giving a formal verification of a compiler or an operating system is very tough and it's not really given. Though for smaller systems, people have started giving formal verification of such systems like compilers or this thing, but we have formal proofs, for example, in blockchain. But then this particular usage of proof was also used by the ancient ones. And in computer science, we need to reason all the time about algorithms, about codes, about distributed systems, about security protocols. And to reason about them and say that they're going to be working correctly and fluently, efficiently, it's vital to be familiar with the fundamental proof techniques. How do you really prove something which you have already seen in your first semester in discrete maths? So why? Because if you are able to prove something formally, then you don't have to really demonstrate. And what I'm going to tell you is that the Indian system said demonstration, give as many formal examples or positive examples, but that is not a proof. That is something which is interesting. And in Krishna Dev Gyan, where we talk about Upatti, which is proof, it says that they said even if you cite any number of favorable instances, and an infinite number of favorable instances where a result may hold, you may say that, okay, the system has no leakage, it has no backdoor where some virus can enter. But what Krishna Dev Gyan in commentary said, that citing any number of positive instances does not amount to establishing a valid result in mathematics. If you want to prove something, then giving positive examples is not sufficient. Demonstration and the result has to be supported by upatti or a proof. No, just not positive examples. And this they had shown. This they had shown in Aryabhatta when he gave approximate value of pi, that is the ratio of the circumference and diameter, which is pi. He says that Bhaskaracharya noted that the approximate value is given only because the exact value cannot be given. And he then argued that other values which have been proposed are without justification. So, for example, Bhaskaracharya gave two proofs that the hypotenuse square is equal to the base square plus the perpendicular square. And the Kutaka the Kuttak procedure was used to solving the first indeterminate equation, and then the proof was given that for finding the GCD using a process of mutual division, which is the so-called Euclidean algorithm. So the formal proofs were very, very important. They had a lot of importance in the proof. No n number of positive examples did not constitute a proof. So something again which is interesting, and you may have read that or you will be reading that in future. There's something which is called proof by contradiction. A proof by contradiction is a form of proof that establishes the truth or the validity of a proposition by showing that assuming the proposition to be false leads to a contradiction. So what is proof by contradiction? It tries to show that assuming the proposition to be false leads to a contradiction. And this is also called indirect proof. Indian system in Upatti says that this is tark. What is tark? It's proof by contradiction. However, Indian system says that proof by tark, proof by contradiction or tark, which is used to show the non-existence of entities, as I told you, just says that a proposition is valid by showing that if you assume the proposition to be false, then there is a contradiction. What we are saying is, in Indian system, they said, no, this proof by contradiction does not add to your knowledge. It is not an independent pramar. What is pramar? Pramar is something that generates knowledge. So no proof by contradiction or indirect proof does not lead to more knowledge. Only constructive approaches lead to more knowledge, and hence tark was not accepted as a proof for generation of knowledge. It could be just an aid or a help for other proof generating techniques. And the Indian logic excludes this upper siddh from logical discourse. So the Nyaya philosophers who are the best logicians, do not grant any scheme of inference where a premise which is known to be false is used to arrive at conclusion. For example, in the Western world, they say God exists. God is perfect. So why God exists? They said, because perfection, non-existence will lead to non-perfection, and hence God being perfect must exist. So the premise itself is wrong. So where a premise is known to be wrong is used to arrive at a conclusion. Are you getting my point? God exists because God is perfect, and the perfection implies existence. Whereas we said, the Indian logician said, if the premise is known to be false to arrive at a conclusion, then the state of independent pramar cannot be used, and hence cannot be used in a logical discourse. And they gave an example that assuming that there's a rabbit which has this, which has that, it is perfect. If it is perfect, it might exist, and we know that such rabbit does not exist. And hence, upper siddh or negative logic cannot be used in logical discourse. Finally, my friends, let's see, people have been moving, and you have heard Professor U.S. Tiwari talking about cognitive, and how do you really become sync with your cognitive abilities, and how cognition and symbolic and how sentences can be used for computation, which is the aim of understanding the brain and taking computer science further. But the Vedas or Veds speak of this connection between the external and the internal worlds. And they say that we are actually a microcosm of the universe. So when they say that fire having become speech entered the mouth. Air becoming scent entered the nostrils. The sun becoming sight entered the eyes. The regions becoming hearing entered the ears. The plants becoming hairs entered the skin. The moon having become mind entered the heart. So this work from the Upanishadic period actually tries to associate the elements with various cognitive centers. And the verse connects time evolution of external objects to the cognitive center. So it's connecting the cognitive center to the external world, to the universe, was what was there in the Upanishadic period. So my friends, what I'm trying to tell you is that we had a lot of knowledge. It's not that we are not creating knowledge today. We are creating a lot of knowledge even today. And we must remember that we have a lot of seeds of knowledge in ancient India, in ancient Indian culture. And what I have shown you is something which was there in computer science, something which we find some seeds here and there which can relate to computer science also, our own system, IT. Wherein we can think, yes, people were thinking about the problems which are still a problem today, being attacked by researchers. It's a challenge for modern researchers, challenge in computer science. We are going a long way in natural language processing, machine learning, but remember, we can also learn from the past. Otherwise, we'll be rediscovering and reinventing the wheel all the time. With that, I'll just close, and if you have any questions, I'm ready to take them. So if you have questions, friends, students. Professor Anjit, if the students have questions. So the students are here and they are ready to take questions. I'll be happy.
So students, so we have listened to a very thought-provoking lecture by Professor Shekhar Verma sir. So if you have any question, please just unmute yourself and ask. We can have some time for discussion, question answer session. If you have any question, just feel free, unmute yourself and ask questions.
So we have 2-3 minutes. It's already going to be 12:05, but we have 2-3 minutes. So I'm ready to take a few questions. Professor, it seems that the students do not have any problems to ask.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
So, okay.
So we
yes.
have one
Okay.
question.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, my question is that as as you explained that from Sanskrit and from the time of Aryabhatta, we have a large and a wide knowledge of mathematics, but still now we are lagging in achieving that position in world regarding mathematics. And our institutes also not publishing so much of research papers as compared to Germany and other mathematics hub.
See, I'll give you an answer to this. A very interesting question. It may have a wider discussion, but my take on this is the day you stop working hard, that day you perish. So it's either if you work hard, it's a perishable thing. The day we stopped working hard, we perished. And you look at the whole thing nowadays, either you use instruments in the labs which come from I would say foreign countries. You have mathematical techniques, or you have techniques which we have been invented and discovered by them. The only reason is that we have stopped working hard. We are not honest to our profession, and we lack curiosity. So most of us, when they come down to here, institutions have a fire in them that they'll be doing and contributing to the society, contributing to the mankind in terms of giving back to the society, in terms of knowledge, in terms of money, in terms of something. But most of the time we end up getting a job. So the main thing I feel that we are lacking because we are not working hard enough. And this has become a matter of habit for us Indians not to work hard enough. What I'm trying to show you through my lecture is that if you work hard enough, you are the same man as your ancestors, and you can really go back and do things. Remember, if you look at the people, they have worked hard. Those who go abroad and go outside still are able to contribute. Now is not the time to contribute individually, because you have to work in a group and innovate within the group, because everybody is working hard. So you have to work hard, learn to work in a group, and don't land up in a job. We know that Indian society is insecure, so you start securing your future and past and present. But after doing that, you'll have to work hard so that you're able to generate ideas. You have to have a bent of mind for innovation. You can start earning, you can hive off a company, or you can have an idea and implement that. But all this needs not losing sight of your aim and working hard. That's the only thing that I believe we don't work hard enough. Our scientists are 9 to 6 or 10 to 5 scientists. They are working for a salary. They are not working to achieve something. Yes, please.
Thank you, sir. So actually your lecture is actually reminding me of a line by one मैथिली शरण गुप्त की, शानदार था भूत भविष्य भी महान है अगर संभाले आप आज जो वर्तमान है.
बिल्कुल, absolutely right.
Okay, sir. So thank you, sir. So I, on behalf of the whole organizing team of Orientation Camp 2021, extend my gratitude and thank for giving your precious time for this orientation camp, and definitely our students must have been benefited with this lecture of yours. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Have a great session in the afternoon. Thank you so much.
You. Thank you. So students, so we shall be meeting once again after a quick break, lunch break of 1 hour. So we shall be reassembling here once again at 1:15 p.m. for the next section by Professor Manoj Dikshit, ex-Vice Chancellor of Ram Manohar Lohia, Awadh University. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.